Good morning friends and welcome back to NPTEL online lectures on public speaking. Friends, you might all remember well that in the previous lectures we have been talking about the different facets of public speaking, and in one of the previous lectures we have also talked about audience awareness. Now, before I go to discuss today's talk, let me ask you a question. Do you really think that personality plays a role in public speaking? Because while we were discussing audience awareness, one question that might have occurred in many of your minds is, why should one listen to a person? And in some of the lectures I also might have told you that a person's image, a person's stature actually in a way prompt listeners or audience members to listen. And that is the reason I have entitled today's talk as role of personality in public speaking. And this of course raises so many questions. The very first is as to what is personality, and the second is that personality also have a role to play in public speaking. I will try my level best to answer these queries and to create in you a sort of sensibility as to when you as a public speaker are going to address a gathering or are going to deliver a talk, how you must take care of the personality traits. Now, many of you most often think that when we talk about personality, then an image in our mind that appears is that of a person who is well built, well structured, having beautiful physical features, having well set eyes, good looks, good dresses and many more. But then after today's lecture you will realize how personality is not confined only to the physical built up or the structure of a person. Now, there can be quite a good number of definitions, but in most of these there is some common quality, and the common quality about personality is, if we put it in the words of N.L. Moon, who says, personality may be defined as the most characteristic integration of an individual's structures. So, I have said physical structure, physical well built, fine, construction, modes of interests. So, now here is an addition. It is not only about the physical makeup or the physical constitution, but modes of interests, attitudes, beliefs, behavior, capacities, abilities and aptitudes. Now, keeping all these traits into consideration, now let us think of those people, I mean those speakers who have attracted your attention too much, and then you will find that in a way that person possesses majority of these qualities, and that is why audience members are tempted to listen to what they utter. So, you might have got a sort of fair idea of what personality can be, but we shall go into the depth of it, because it is somehow or the other related to the psychology, because whenever we talk about behavior, naturally the term psychology comes into question. There can be another anonymous quote by one person who says, a healthy personality is a process, not a state of being. What is meant by process and what is meant by the state of being? I mean, it's very clear. It's actually the way one develops, the way one is made. It is actually a process, a direction, not a destination. So, if you keep all these things into consideration, then perhaps you will understand what is personality. Though in our day to day talk, every now and then we have heard people saying, and we also at times say, that his personality is not what it should have been. And then our focus does not go to all these qualities, rather it goes only to the constitution, I mean the physical constitution. Now, it would be quite pertinent if we can understand how this word personality came into being. This word personality is derived from the Latin word which is persona, persona, and this persona actually means mask. Now, in today's world, I mean over the 2 years, the word mask has become very important. This mask is actually quite different one from the one that we are talking about. So, all of us are wearing a mask. Psychologically speaking, all of us actually are having a sort of outer quality, and we have also got some inner qualities. So, the inner qualities are already hidden, my dear friend. So, when we talk about personality, it actually comprises so many qualities, so many attributes. What are they? Physique, of course, physique is very important. Dress, fine. Communication skills, we are talking about public speaking, and in public speaking, communication skills plays an integral part, but a person who is communicating, how he is to be relied upon depends very much on his personality. Attitude, it is also a part of one's personality. Values, emotions, fine. So, all these in a way go to combine a sort of personality. Actually, whenever we talk about personality, we are reminded of Sigmund Freud, a psychologist who said that all of us actually possess 3 layers. Our mind has got 3 layers. And what are these? So, from Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory, the human personality is governed by 3 distinct interacting agents. I think we might have given a passing reference to id, ego and superego, and you are well conversant with these terms. And what are they? When we talk about id, it is actually a sort of natural instinct present in all of us. And then ego is reality, fine. And when we talk about superego, it is just like the justice, just like the judge. Now, when id actually acts, id actually says, I want it now. You want something that is actually your id. But then how to have that? Fine, you will actually have to have a sort of planning, meaning thereby, so the id, in order to fulfill this id, you will have to plan, and which we call under the term ego, because you will have to do some real tasks. But then if you really need to do a sort of planning to get something that you crave for, now comes the question, within all of us there is a judge, there is a moral consideration, and this moral consideration tells you whether it is right or wrong. You can get something done either by wrong regions or by right regions. This is called super ego. So, this is actually Freud's description of psychoanalytic theory. Now, whenever we are driven by id, because id is the instinctual part, it contains aggressive desires, aggressive drives, memories even, fine, and it actually works through pleasure principle. When you want something, you can be happy only when you get that, but in order to get that, ego will come which will mediate between id and the superego. You have got to do something, you have got to get something, but then for that you will have to plan. So, it is actually a reality principle. Somebody is hungry and wants bread, but in order to get that bread, he will either have to plan, either have to buy or have to make. But what sort of action he is going to take, that will be decided by superego, which will actually tell you whether it is right or whether it is wrong. It actually inhibits, because when it is id, it is a sort of natural impulse, instincts, fine. What ego does? Ego actually tells you that you will have to execute the plan, but then when you are going to do that, within you, within your own psyche, something will say this is not the right way. That is why the superego can be considered to be the moral guardian. Now, my dear friends, when we talk about personality, we have to take all these things into consideration. And you might be quite curious to know, how is personality related to public speaking? Because in a public speaking situation, when a speaker speaks, when a speaker produces a speech, it is actually perceived as a form of self-expression. Self-expression, self and then expression. What is this self? Again, we are having both a psychological and a philosophical question, which actually can have a lot of queries, lot of answers. So, when a speaker communicates his ideas, he unintentionally reveals his own personality. How? Through his emotions. Look at the person speaking. You will find his limbs moving, his emotions being displayed on his face, his attitudes also, whether to do something or not to do, fine. So, his emotions and attitudes, they also come into consideration. In this regard, let us take a very beautiful quote by Eliud Murray, who say, speech and personality grow. We have already said in the beginning, personality is a process. So, when we say process, naturally a process means growth. It is not one time. It actually will take a time. It actually will go. That is why we say it is a process. There will be several factors. Develop, fine, differentiate and become refined together. Speech is a phase of personality. Now, imagine some of your friends whom you had met during your school days, and now you have not met him for all these years. Suddenly, after years, you meet him, and when you talk to him, you find a sea change in him. Is it the same person who used to sit on the last bench and always used to keep mum? And today he has actually become an ebullient speaker, fine, a speaker who is much in demand, fine. How did he manage to do all these things? There actually has been a process, and you do not know how he developed all these things over the years. Now, since we have said personality is self-expression, when we say public speaking, it is self-expression and it is related to personality. So, there is a sort of correlation, my dear friends. Evidences suggest that personality variables, I mean, we have talked about values, attitudes, behaviors, emotions, fine. So, all these variables influence the speech proficiency of an individual. Now, think of a person and the person as a speaker, you like him or dislike him. You will find that there are certain things you like, there are certain things you actually dislike. Fine. There are certain variables. And why? Because there are several instances for that. The first can be a premise. I mean, when a person speaks, oration. Oration requires short term as well as long term memory. Why everyone cannot speak very spontaneously, very fluently? Fine. You can find that some of your friends who used to be quite reticent, now they have become very fluent speakers. So, oration requires both short term as well as long term memory. When a speaker speaks, some of them you can find that they start stammering. Many of them they are very fluent. Then comes hypothesis. I mean, there are two types of people. One can be an introvert and the other can be an extrovert. You will often find that those people who are introvert, these people are not mixing, they do not mix with other people, and they are somehow or the other shy, they hesitate too much, they are not able to speak their mind in public. But then there are other category of people who are very extrovert, meaning thereby they are very outgoing, very mixing. No, they are men who can always love or prefer to be in group. So, extroverts possess short term memory, whereas introverts are having long term memory. Now, those people who are extrovert, naturally they will be very loquacious, they will speak too much, and such people may often forget. But those who are introvert, because they keep everything inside, for them their memories can come to their help or their aid if they can utilize them. Now, the third stage is conclusion. And what can we derive? What sort of a conclusion can we derive? Extroverts excel at speech production. I mean, those people who are extroverts, they actually prove themselves better than introverts because their verbal processing capacity, which are induced from their ability to short term recall. Fine. These are actually the three stages, my dear friend. Apart from this, there are certain traits which extroverts have always an edge over introverts. Say for example, self-confidence. You will find those who are introverts, they are lacking in self-confidence, whereas extroverts have too much of self-confidence. Extraversion, we will discuss what is extraversion, it is a psychological term. Those people who are extroverts, they will have more friends, they will often become more cheerful, they are often more excited, fine. They often want to go with a group, fine. Then intelligence, verbal fluency, naturally somebody who is extrovert speaks more and they are good at their verbal ability. Composure, all these actually go into the making of the personality or the makeup of a competent speaker. That is why speech reflects the personality of the speaker. Why we like some speakers and why we dislike some speakers? Because there are some speakers who actually want to give you everything through their speech, but there are many who, even though they have that quality within, but because of their introvert nature, they are not able to display the qualities. In this regard, let us also try to understand that in public speaking, personality is actually a sort of investment. It is a sort of investment which can help you get rich dividends. It provides a speaker the intrinsic worth because of so many qualities which in a way we can call extraversion, fine. And these extroverts, they often receive a lot of applause, a lot of plaudits a lot of praise from the audience. No? You might have seen those speakers who are extroverts, they know how to make use of the volume of their voice, their pitch levels, fine, and this actually go to stimulate the crowd, and towards the end all you can see are the claps, all you can see are the sort of ovations. So, in order to become an efficient public speaker, one actually has to have a sort of good personality. Now, there are psychologists who have gone to examine this, and there is a 5-factor model, and this 5-factor model, which have actually this 5-factor model has been given by Macro and Costa. So, they say that this is actually an all inclusive 5-factor model, they call it FFM. Now, what are these 5 factors? The very first, as I was mentioning earlier, is extraversion. Extra and version. You know, version means version, no? Version is speech. Extra, somebody who speaks more. Now, these people, as I have been saying, that they are more accessible, they are more mixing, they actually are more gregarious by nature, and they have got certain qualities. What are these qualities? Friendliness, very friendly, no, would like to talk to everyone. He would not be as reserved as an introvert. Gregariousness, always would like to go in a group, in a collection, fine. So, they have a sort of collectivism. Then assertiveness, they have got a sort of assertiveness. They also have a sort of activity level, they are more excited, and most of the time these extraversion people, they are cheerful, my dear friend. Then they have another quality, that is agreeableness, they agree, no, but then an introvert person, even though he or she may react at times, but they always may not be agreeable. These people, then another quality, another 5-factor, one of these 5 factors is conscientiousness. One always has to keep alive one's own conscience, meaning thereby one has to be trustworthy, and you always might have found that that somebody who has actually got an established personality, he is trusted more. And again, emotional stability, those people who are extroverts, they most often, you know, sometimes you may feel that they are not trustworthy, but in order to have a better personality, one has to have trustworthiness, fine, and then intellect, of course. Without knowledge, you cannot become a good public speaker. So, these 5-factor model are very important for the categorization of the personality traits, not only locally, but globally, my dear friend. Now, the question that we have been trying to answer is, does personality really impact? Does it really affect? Yes. Your intrinsic traits, your voice, movements, diction, actually all these go into the making of a proficient speaker. So, Sarrett and Foster, one of their very famous books entitled Basic Principles of Speech. In this famous book, they outline the vital importance or the impact of certain personality traits such as extraversion. We need not spend too much time on extraversion because we have already discussed. Somebody who is an extrovert, sociable, accessible, somebody who is mixing, agreeableness, somebody who can agree, and one who can agree will be friendly. Then conscientiousness we have already talked about. Emotional stability. You are not going to listen to a person who does not have an emotional stability. A person who said something and does something else, you are not going to trust him. So, an impactful speaker should display emotional maturity and should keep on composed bearing while delivering a speech. Intellect, we have already said, it is all about knowledge. One cannot have a good personality unless and until one is aware of what is happening around him, what new developments are taking place, whatever be the topic or the content of his presentation or talk. And then, of course, self-confidence is the key to all sorts of agitations which actually introverts most often are lacking in. So, in public speaking too, self-confidence is very important, and one should always try to develop a sort of self-confidence. If a person is not self-confident, will he be fluent? No. Every now and then he will actually start thinking for words, thinking for ideas. He is not prepared. And once you are not prepared, how can you be self-confident? So, it has always been seen that somebody who has got lot of self-confidence may actually pull himself even out of critical moments. So, verbal fluency can be granted to those or are ingrained in them who have got this self-confidence, because to be adept at communication skills, one needs to convey one's own thoughts and emotions without any dilly-dally, without any confusion, isn't it? Then comes vocals. How do you make use of vocals? Whenever you speak, are you really aware of how you are making your voices go up and go down, and how at times you become neutral? We shall be discussing all these when we shall be talking about the nuances of paralinguistic features when we say, because every now and then not every topic is uninteresting or interesting. It is actually the person who is interesting or uninteresting, my dear friend. Then comes presentability. How do you present yourself as a public speaker in a crowd? So, this presentability involves so many things: your entire makeup, your hair, your limbs, your lips, your facial expressions, your dress, your shoes, the sort of radiance which you bring on your own face. And then comes integrity. Integrity. Nowadays, people who have got integrity, most of the time they feel that their integrity doesn't allow them to succeed in this world where a lot of hide and seek is being played upon. But integrity is a quality, my dear friend, and established people who have got a good personality, they often do not deviate from their own integrity. Personal integrity of a person lures the audience, fine, to listen to what the speaker says, and it actually provides him or her with a sort of positive attitude, my dear friend. Fine. So, it plays an important role in stimulating the crowd, in encouraging the crowd, in making the crowd aware and getting a lot of acclaim, applause, plaudits, praises and whatnot. Now, here you can find two situations have been given where on the one hand we find the attitude of a speaker, I mean the attitude which can be maintained during the production of a speech or during the delivery of a presentation. And on the other side we find that as a public speaker, how personality works. Now, you can ask these questions to yourself and you can decide for yourself whether you are going to be a good public speaker or you are going to lag behind others because you do not possess a personality that actually can come to help you, can provide a sort of weapon to you to let you come out of these critical moments. Are you talkative at social gatherings? Fine. Of course, these 2 years have made you quite an isolated being, but were you really that even before? Fine. So, during social gatherings, you can find many people keep themselves quite aloof. Don't come near me. Fine. There are other people who would go to everyone and ask, fine, how they are. They would often talk about the everyday happenings, and such people are considered to be extroverts. Are you troubled with shyness? I mean, these questions you can ask yourself. Do you try to get your own way even if you have to fight for it? I mean, do you also have a problem of glossophobia? I mean, you feel nervous when you have to speak to strangers? Fine. This is all a part of your personality, either on the negative side or on the positive side, my dear friends. So, you can come across several categories of speaker. All these people can have different categories. As a speaker, a public speaker can be avoider. He will often avoid. You know, in one of the surveys it was said that in US there are 80 to 90% people who often prefer death to public speaking, my dear friends. So, such people are considered to be avoiders. They are registers, fine. From registers, they actually are afraid of speaking. They are often reluctant. They do not want to speak. Such people always want to keep themselves quite aloof. Acceptor, one who can accept, come what may. Let me take the bull by its horns. Such people often give presentations, occasionally as a part of job, and they do not look for, fine, such opportunities. Whenever there is an opportunity, such people will speak. You might have found, if you are a teacher, you might have found there are many students who often think, by the time my turn comes, why doesn't the bell ring, so that I may get a sort of escape route. But this escape route appears to be a problem route in the days to come, my dear friend. So, try to become a register, try to become a seeker. In small groups, fine. In a group of your friends, fine. Give a small talk, ask them, take the feedback, and the next day or the next week give another talk, because I have been saying personality is a sort of process, and this process has to be developed, my dear friend. We can also have some do's and don'ts of personal appearance, because we have said that personal appearance also plays a very vital role in the making of one's personality, fine. So, there are times when either you are in a group, see to it that you stand close, stay direct, stay involved with your audience, fine. When you speak, make use of your facial expressions. Don't be like a statue, rather be like a moving person. By moving here, I mean movements of your emotions. Let your face not be stolid. We shall discuss and explore these things in detail when we talk about the importance of non-verbal in public speaking. And as I have been saying, one has to vary one's pitch behavior. How long should my voice go? How short should my voice go? How I should maintain a sort of neutrality? There are certain don'ts. So, you always know that a person who is often shy, you will find them putting their hands in the pocket, wringing their hands as if they have lost something, or as if they are in a situation of helplessness. And if they get time, either they speak too loud or they speak too soft, so that they can only listen to, and the others can keep floundering, others can keep guessing what sort of utterance is this, my dear friend. Regarding your posture, regarding your eye contact and your conversational pace, all these are also very important. One should either have a very stiff posture, nor one should have a very flexible one. One should, even in terms of dress also, one has to take into consideration certain regulations, the one that can fit you, not the one that can make you become sort of person who can simply be laughed at, because you are a public speaker, and a public speaker's job is to speak before the public, my dear friend. Now, public speaking and personality, they are interrelational, fine. So, public speaking is completely related to the personality of the speaker in more ways than one, because the skill of public speaking complement your public speech, your speech in particular, and also for the general, fine. So, these two, meaning thereby the personality and the speaking, they actually flourish simultaneously. That is why the other day you met your other friend of yours and you find a sea change. How? Because he developed. Interacting aspects of the individual's holistic development, my dear friend, overall development, and one cannot have an overall development unless and until one can bring into him or her these traits. Speech, as Eisenson says, is actually the reflection of the totality of our experiences entirely, in its entirety, innately, in a very natural manner as well as environmental. So, the efficiency of public speaking can be considered to be directly proportional to the development of the personality of the speaker, and that is why I have been harping upon the same thing. Personality is integral to the public speech of a person. There are certain things which are very much required, and there are certain things which can be developed, which many of us do not possess. Say for example, what are the requirements? Critical thinking. A public speaker, if you refer to some of the previous lectures where I have said that critical thinking is also being developed if you start taking interest as a public speaker. Confidence, we have already said, communication skills, leadership, and your emotional composure. And while you are learning these public speaking skills, you can find within yourself the development of yourself as a better thinker, as a confident, honest, intellectual, reliable, trustworthy, assertive, and of course, you will have a high level of emotional quotient. My dear friends, before I come to sum up this lecture, let me make a mention of the quote by W.T. Foster, who says, "What you are speaks so loud, I cannot hear what you say." Meaning thereby, the very first impression of the audience members goes to the personality of the person, to the appearance of the person, and in that what the person speaks is lost. So, in a way, if your speech even is not going to be that attractive, but you have a nice personality, you have certain good qualities, all these things can help you compensate for the lapses which you are still suffering from as a speaker. I think this will enable you to develop these traits and will help you realize, analyze, and of course, enumerate and instill within yourself these traits, so that in the coming days you become a good public speaker, which people will pay thousands and thousands of rupees to listen to you, even in an age where there is too much of speech but too less of listening. With this, we come to the end of this talk. Thank you very much. I wish you all a good day.